welcome. Honestly, isn't it freaking cool when a bunch of women and some men get together in a room to talk about business? Well, I know a lot of people in this room. My name is Tammy Dorr. I'm co-founder and co-chair of Denver Startup Week, and just so thrilled that you are all here. And I hope that you are giving and getting as much as you want out of this week so far. So thank you, though. Really grateful that you're here. We at Denver Startup Week are very committed to giving platforms and places and spaces and voices to women to talk about all of the things that go into starting, launching, and growing companies, wrapped around with the leadership and really just what it means to be a woman in a startup and entrepreneurial environment. Today is exactly one of those opportunities. We have our Women of DSW series. This is part of this, and it's sponsored by Contentful. So many of you heard me say this before, but remember, Denver Startup Week is the largest free entrepreneurial event in the United States of America. Yes, it's a very big deal. And it is free because why? Sponsors. So let's just give a big round of applause and thank you to Contentful. And you know, I know this may seem light, but we track all the media around our sponsors, all social media. So we give everyone a report. How often were you mentioned? How often were you acknowledged? Please take a minute on your social to just acknowledge and thank Contentful for their support of women. Please, it goes a long way. And, you know, think of it this way. By doing that, you get a free drink somewhere or food. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. All right. Well, we have some great women leaders, businesswomen to hear from today, and we have a great woman who's going to be moderating it. I'm really so pleased to introduce you to Simone Ross, who's CEO of the Women's Chamber. I've had the privilege to work with Simone in a number of ways in the community for a long time. She's incredible. If you don't know her, please take time to get to know her because, was that me? Oh, okay. Okay. It's usually me, that's why I'm saying it. All right, let's give Simone a big round of applause. Welcome, Simone.
Hello, hello, hello. Ain't no party like a Denver Startup Week, Women Who Startup Party, because a DSW Women Startup Party don't stop, right? Absolutely. So as my amazing friend Tammy said, I'm Simone D. Ross. I'm the CEO of the Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce. And we are beyond excited to welcome each and every single one of you for this incredible conversation that you're getting ready to witness and learn from. This is supposed to be an interactive learning conversation for all of us because you know what we're supposed to do when we leave this room? The expectation is that we go forth and build the damn thing, okay? Can we say when we leave, we gonna do what? Absolutely, we're going to build the damn thing. So what also this is about when we think about the prevalence of creating equity to access, right? Access for funding, access to opportunity, access just in general, it's about economic inclusivity. And so, you know, at one point, we've been a little bit passive, like, well, women, we just want our little slice. F that. We are here in community building collaboratively together to say now is our time. We're standing together. We're standing with allies. We're standing with other builders because the only way we're going to build this thing called economic inclusivity is if we build the damn thing together. So a huge thank you to our partner, Tara. Tara Co. I know, I gotta explain this. Tara, it's actually a Greek goddess. It's the name of the company. That is Kate, the founder of Tara. Kate's name is not Tara, it's Kate. I know. A huge thank you to our partner, Tara, and its founder, Kate Bailey, for continuing to infuse this marketplace with creativity, innovation, and support for all of us and to fortify this incredible ecosystem. Yes, thank you. Whoop, yeah? Thank you to Denver Startup Week, Women of Denver Startup Week, and thank you all for being here because just by you having those butts and those seats, it means that you are committed to creating an economically inclusive environment for every single one of us. Now, I don't know what you all know about Kathryn Finney. Who knows a little something about Kathryn Finney? Ruh-roh. Well, then this is a really good time to learn a little bit more about this incredible woman. I mean, if I had to put it in bullet points, it would be excellent, brilliant, innovative, groundbreaking, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, okay? She has her venture fund, 30-plus angel investments. She's mentoring entrepreneurs. She's fostering economic, financial, and social opportunities for Black-owned businesses across the United States of America. Absolutely. Kathryn Finney is one of the most influential women in tech. She's the founding managing partner of Genius Guild. It is a Chicago-based venture fund that invests in bold, high-growth startups led by BIPOC founders, taking into consideration the social determinants of health framework to build market-driven solutions that are disrupting the $4.3 trillion healthcare industry. Now, there's a green book right here. If you don't have a copy, for the shame. Get a copy of this book. She is the author of Wall Street Journal's best-selling book, Build the Damn Thing, How to Start a Successful Business If You're Not a Rich White Guy. That is the question on all of our minds. Kathryn, how do we start a business if our name is not John? Kathryn is an inclusion champion and investor to encourage Black founders and women entrepreneurs to pursue their entrepreneurial dreams. If you don't have a notebook, get your iPhone notes ready, get your voice memos ready, because you are about to learn so much. And then when you leave here, buy the book, get the book, and go out and do what? All right.
Simone, can you travel with me? That's
right.
Amazing intro.
It is always so hard to follow that.
Thank you for that.
Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Simone. Thank you, Denver Startup Week. And just so you all know, you can buy the book and get it signed afterwards. Kathryn is sticking around. So I think that this conversation is going to definitely pique your interest on it. So how did this come to be? I'm having one of those dog wagging its tail moments where you just want to get down and jiggle because you're so excited. So I received a copy of your book from the Ladies Who Launch group back this spring, and I opened up the first 2 pages and I started reading through the prologue, and I immediately took a photo of the cover and I sent it to Simone and I said, Denver Startup Week, and she texted me back and says, yeah, it looks great, I'm in. So then I emailed it to Chantal and Adina, I think they're here today, and said, just by chance, do you happen to not have a keynote speaker yet? And they said, yeah. And I said, great, this is your person. And continued to read the book and just became more and more enthralled with your philosophy, because I think that it aligns so well with what we're doing at Tara, what Simone's doing at CWCC, and really kind of the ethos of, to me, what this Colorado startup ecosystem can and should be, which is building something from the ground up with equity at its core. And I talked about this yesterday on stage, that this isn't about eliminating the rich white guys. This is about
We need them.
We need them.
We need
them. And I think that what it's about is saying, the all boats rise, and if we can build this ecosystem to include all of the people in this room, everybody above that is going to benefit from it. And so I really want you all to think about that from this conversation from that perspective. This isn't about eliminating a very important part of our conversation. It's about saying, let's get everybody from the ground up. So thank you for coming. I'm so thrilled to have you on stage. It's definitely a pinch me moment. So I've got some long questions, but I want to kind of wrap some context around the book, because I think there's some great components of it that I want to dig into. And one of the opening quotes in the book is, "The universe is conspiring for your greatness." And when you and I talked originally, you said something really important that I want everybody in the audience to hear, particularly as we launch into conversations about building and money. You said that coming from a place of abundance is important when building, especially when you are operating in capitalism, which tends to operate in a scarcity mindset. So I'm going to say that one more time. Especially when you're operating in capitalism, which tends to operate in a scarcity mindset. How can the founders in this room rethink that mindset? And second question, how does that impact how they build?
Well, first, thank you for having me, Denver. Your weather is like amazing. So
It's why everybody moves here.
thank you. And then also let me do a slight apology. I'm just recovering from a bout of COVID, and I mentioned earlier today, if any of you have small little people or like small little people, you know they're a petri dish. And my son went back to school, and he brought me a very nice present when he came home. So if my voice is a little bit lower than normal, please excuse me. And so this idea of coming from a place of abundance, it can be challenging, particularly when you come from a marginalized community. And a marginalized community is not just gender or race. It could be class. It could be differently able-bodied in terms of, in terms of what is marginalized. And it can be really hard to think in that sort of way, especially in the system that we currently operate in, which tells us if I win, you lose. If you win, I lose. And it's really interesting because historically in America, we weren't that way. Prior to really the 1970s, we had this idea of stakeholder capitalism, which was not only as a CEO of a company, I care about my shareholders, the people who have ownership in my company, but I also care about the people who work for my company. I care about where they live, the environment in which they live in, that we're all in this together. And so I need to make sure everyone's good, my stakeholders, in order for my company to do well. In the 70s, we switched to more shareholder capitalism, where we tended to focus only on those who own, only the owner class. And as a result, it's created this sort of space where it's win at all costs, as long as I have ownership, really, really pushing that forward. And I think it's made it really difficult for us to get back to really the entrepreneurial roots of our country. We are a country of entrepreneurs. We're a country of risk takers, of people who set forth and did not know what was going on. Some of us by choice, some of us were brought here. And so in order for us to get back to that, we have to start to think of abundance. We have to start to think of what does it mean for me to win and you to win at the same time. And it doesn't mean that we all get the same exit for in venture speak. But it does mean that, maybe I get a little something too. You don't have to have everything. And it's really interesting because there's a lot of conversations happening in the investment community about that. Like, when is enough? Someone brought up Brené Brown. I don't know how many of you read Brené Brown, but she talks about the opposite of scarcity is an abundance. It's enough. And just think about that for a moment. What is enough, right? And it's weird, I know, hearing that from a venture capitalist talk about maybe we don't need to take everything, but but I think we have to, in order for us to sustain as a community and communities, we have to start thinking a little bit differently, because the path we're on is not working. And so your second question of, like, as an entrepreneur, how do you bring a air of abundance into what you do when you're in this high pressure situation where people are telling you it's scarce? And it really comes from centering what it is that you do and making sure, first of all, that you're doing something that you love. And I was speaking to someone earlier today, and I said, I know this is a cliche, but really figure out what it is that you love to do and figure out how to make money from it. That's like the secret holy grail of entrepreneurship. And so when you love what it is that you do, when you love what it is that you're building, and you're not building it just for money or prestige or what have you, you are already centering abundance. Because it's something that you would do even if you weren't getting paid for it. It just happened to be you figured out how to get paid for it. And so that would be the first place I would suggest as an entrepreneur to start. If you are building something and you hate it, you are not going to be able to be abundant. You're just not. But if you're building something that you love, it's something that is connected to who you are, it's going to be so easy. And then when you find out how to make money from it, oh my God. And that's what happened to me.
Beautiful. So I want to talk a little bit about this journey of an entrepreneur, because in the book you say not everyone can or should be an entrepreneur.
Yep.
You could even say that choosing to be an entrepreneur, this is a quote, is an exercise in bad judgment.
It is.
It is, absolutely. It's
most
an
batshit crazy thing to
extremely
decide to
lonely
do.
endeavor, involves a great deal of risk, both for personal and financial. And if you do want to be an entrepreneur, and this is what I love about this quote, if you do, preparation is key. And this is a conversation I am constantly thinking about, because entrepreneur requires that sacrifice, the self-doubt, financial risk, and heartbreak. And I know that I leapt into entrepreneurship. I mean, I remember saying this to myself, like, oh, how hard can it be, right? And you get like a year into it and you're like, oh my God, I can't Google this, right? And so, you know, talk to us a little bit about that kind of internal path for building for that kind of success, and a little bit more about how builders can fortify themselves internally for this really hard work ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of really practical things that I've learned from building, and excuse my language, fucking up a lot too. In the process, I've had some great successes, and I've also had some real failures that you could probably Google. So the first thing is, and there's some really the practical things, is what I call your number, your exit number. And that's the amount that you need, because I feel like I'm neglecting you over here. Hey.
I'll hang out and look at them.
Okay, you'll
if
hang
you
out
wanna
over
look at
there?
these guys, because I'm looking at these guys over here. So
Your exit number, and this is a very practical thing. I'm from Minnesota, so we're very practical and pragmatic. It's woohoo! It is the number you need to live, whatever that amount is each month. And this is not the number you need to be bling bling, right? It's the number that you need to live your life, like to pay your rent, to eat, to drive your car, all the basics you need. And usually in the book, I say like 6 months of that before you leave whatever your job is. And the reason why I say that is, particularly when you come from marginalized communities, it's going to take a lot longer for you to fundraise. It's going to take a lot longer, a lot longer. You may not have a safety net. You may not have a rich uncle or aunt or someone who can come in. So for you, it's a greater risk when you leave your job. And so you need to make sure that you have enough money to help you at least try out your idea, where it reduces the amount of financial risk for you because you don't have that safety net. That's a very pragmatic, practical thing to do. The exit number, it's not a set number. Someone asked me, like, what's the number? I'm like, I don't know what you need to live. I don't. I live in Chicago. You know, I need to make sure that I have Starbucks each morning. I need that. Like, I do. You don't want to meet me before I have that. And so there's books that tell you get rid of your lattes. I'm like, but what if that latte that you get each morning is the way you connect with the community, right? What if that's the only time you get to see someone each day, right? We're entrepreneurs, so it can be a lonely journey. So I can't tell you what that number is. Another thing when you're building is to make sure that you have and really create your personal toolbox. And that, again, these are certain things that you can put in it to help you succeed. So for example, I always talk about your personal board of directors. These are the people who are not necessarily connected in the business. They're in the business of you, right? So one example I talk about in the book is my mom. And my mom, to paraphrase the movie Taken, has a very particular skill set that she's developed over many years. You know, she's a 75-year-old black grandma. No one's going to argue with her. Like, you will not win if you do. And so, being a public person, I often have people coming to me, particularly family members and people out of the woodwork. And my mom is very good as the enforcer of, like, helping me to not have to step out of who I am. She's like, I got it. It's like, this person emailed me saying that they needed a refrigerator. She's like, don't worry, I got it. And so that may seem simple, but that's really helpful to me as a person. I have a friend who's been a long-term business partner who will tell me about myself. And what I mean by that is, you know, sometimes we're not living our highest and best. And as an entrepreneur, you get really stressed. So sometimes you're really not living your highest and best. You need that person on your board of directors who can tell you about yourself, and you hear them. Because a lot of people will tell you what you need to hear, but you don't really hear them because you don't trust them, you don't feel connected to them. You need that person whose advice you listen to. And that's really, really crucial. I see a lot of entrepreneurs who don't necessarily have that. And it's been really, really helpful for me to have that person in my life.
That's a great part of the book, actually. Another plug for reading it is sort of thinking through what this board of directors is, as well as that price. And you know, the one thing that I've heard over and over again before I started my company, and I'm so grateful that I did, from other founders, was you have to feel safe. You cannot build a company, you cannot raise money, you cannot get up every day and do all of the hard things if you don't feel safe. And so if you are interested, if you haven't, you know, jumped on the entrepreneurial journey yet, but you want to, it's okay to take a full-time job or a part-time job while you're building the thing. There is no shame in that. There is also no shame in having a full-time job the whole time you have a company. If that's what makes you feel safe and that's what makes you capable of going out and doing the hard things, then all the more power to you. And I think that we've got to get rid of this culture of like, I can only be an entrepreneur that, you know, lives in my garage. And that is so old hat, and that is so not
Eating
interesting
is good.
to me. Yeah, eating and Starbucks are good. Like,
You know,
yeah,
like-
I am here for that. And I lived at home with my parents for like 2 years and saved money, and it was the best thing that I ever did. And I had no shame. I was like, I'm just gonna go do this thing, right? So I do want to continue this conversation about money, because I think that in addition to so many of the great, you know, pieces of leadership advice that you have in there, the conversation about, you know, the green elephant in the room, money is also one of the really important pieces of this book. And I've heard this quite a few times over the last several months, and I want to dig into it a bit more. Your line in the book is, quote, "Pursuing the wrong type of money can be disastrous." And that resonated really hard with me, especially coming from, you know, people that come from marginalized backgrounds or don't have the rich white uncle. And I want to hear a little bit more about that line, but also how founders are particularly susceptible to taking the wrong money or raising money for the wrong reason. And I'd love for you to dig into those conversations, because I think that this is something that everybody in the room needs to hear.
Yeah, I mean, not all money is good money. It isn't. Sometimes there's strings attached to it. And I think as an entrepreneur, sometimes we so get desperate for the investment that we don't take a step and we don't stop and pause and ask ourselves, is this the investor I want? When you take investment, particularly venture capital, I am your boss for 5 to 7 years at least, maybe longer, depending on how your company grows. Do you want to be with me for 5 to 7 years? You got to ask yourself that when you take investment. I've seen a lot of founders get into trouble of taking angel investment from angels who don't know how to invest, who are not real investors, and end up bugging them. You know, someone who gave them $10,000, $20,000, which is a lot of money, but not in the context if you're building a big company. And they end up like really kind of frustrated because this one investor is kind of, you know, not really understanding the pathway of building. So you have to ask yourself, is this money that I want? Is this good money? How does this money help? What else is this person bringing besides money? And that's another question I think entrepreneurs get hung up on. They just see the money, but they don't ask themselves, well, you know, I also need connections. I need a network. I maybe need office space. I maybe need someone who's gonna like mentor and counsel me when things go bad. And they will go bad as an entrepreneur. It will go bad at one point. And so I need, you know, an investor who I can talk to. Is this person gonna be with me in the trenches? You have to ask yourself all those questions besides the money. And I think that's where we kind of get hung up on. Sometimes we get so focused on the money, and it's the scarcity mindset, is getting back to scarcity. I'm so afraid, particularly when you don't have access to capital, that I'm never going to have access to capital again. So I'm just gonna go and take whatever comes, and I'm not gonna ask any questions. And I've seen so many founders lose their companies because of that. They did not sit and ask the questions. So if you're fundraising, especially if you're fundraising from angels and venture or VCs, ask other founders about them. It's okay. Like, I expect people to do a reference check on me. I want you to. I want you to know what it's like working with me. So as a founder, it is your right to go talk to other folks who they've invested in and ask them questions. What else did they give you besides the money? How quickly did the money come? That's another thing too. You might sign, all the documents to get the investment, but then it takes them like 3 months to get you the money. Well, I need the money tomorrow. Like, I don't need 3 months, right? So you want to ask all these questions of other founders before you take money. That's super, super important.
Follow-up question there. I know there's a lot of founders in the audience that maybe will never look for angel or venture capital. And this is something that a lot of you know that in this audience that I'm really passionate about is helping business owners and founders understand that there is so much more money out there than just angel and venture. And you go into this in the book, and I think that there's some great advice in there. So for those businesses that maybe they need to, get to the point that they can actually go for angel investment, what are some of those alternatives that you think are kind of perennially underutilized? And what would be your advice to someone that's maybe 1 to 2 years in, is not a high growth tech startup, maybe a scalable services? What is your advice to them on getting that kind of capital infusion so that they can, spend it the right way and grow?
Yeah, I mean, venture has been marketed to be like the end all and be all. It really isn't. I tell people, you don't want my money. Again, I'm your boss for 5 to 7 years. So the longer you can start off taking venture, the better actually it is for you as the founder. One, you maintain a lot more equity in your company, because if you're getting venture, you're gonna have to give up equity, and each subsequent round you raise, you're gonna have to give up more and more equity. So the longer you can starve off fundraising, the better for you as a founder. But there are also other avenues too that I think people don't talk about. It's not really uplifted. One example is the Build Back Better program that was a legislation that was passed last year by the Biden administration, gave block grants to each state to invest in small businesses. So definitely, I don't know if there's anyone here from the state of Colorado, but go to the Colorado Small Business Administration and look up the grants that they have. They have a number of grants for small businesses. There's local community development corporations that invest in founders and in startups, but also traditional brick and mortar companies. One I mentioned before was Accion, which is a local community investment group. It's around the nation, but they have one here in Colorado. And what's great about Accion is you don't have to have great credit to get the loan, which is often a barrier. If you go to a traditional bank, it's virtually impossible to get a business loan from a bank now. Even if you have a lot of revenue, it's just not what they're doing, which is really unfortunate, because that's where many people got their start, was from bank loans. There's also great programs like Ladies Who Launch, which is a great program that I know Kate knows a lot about. It's founded by the CEO of Nextdoor, which is a very successful startup. She's an amazing woman who really wants to see other women succeed, and they have amazing grant programs, and they talk about other grant programs as well. So there's a lot of different avenues to get started. There's pitch contests still. There's a lot of pitch contests still going on. That's a great way to get quick capital. Non-dilutive, which is basically means we're not taking any part of your company. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. You can also go to family, but I really don't talk about that because many of us don't have families that can give us money. So my family, if I borrow, $50K from them, they want it back, like tomorrow. And so what do you do if you don't have that? Am I not supposed to build? No. So there's some other avenues. There's crowdfunding, which is another interesting avenue. And what I like about crowdfunding, and I think crowdfunding is more appropriate, I think, for those who are building products. What I like about crowdfunding is that you're building in your customer. Your customer is becoming your advocate because they're also an owner. So if you're building a product, and doing crowdfunding is a great way to get people involved in promoting your product because they're an owner, right? The success, them sharing with other people to buy your product helps them as well. So those are just some of the different avenues. There's a lot of other resources. I know there's the women startup community here in Denver as well. Lizelle is like one of the representatives of it here. And so there's a lot of other ways to figure out what's going on. I also say talk to each other after this. I want to implore each of you to meet 2 new people. I'm not going to check after you because, I don't live in Denver, but networking is also another good way to find out what resources are available for you, and particularly networking with people who are in your community, because they know more. They know a lot more than I know about what's available here to you in Denver. So after this, try to meet 2 new people and try to make 2 new connections.
Beautiful. That's something that we talk a lot about at Tara, is just kind of that curiosity and constantly digging. And unfortunately, again, you cover this in the book, that is something that is a unique thing that if you're not a rich white guy, that's kind of what you have to do. I mean, it is a lot more work and it is a lot more endeavor, but at the end of the day, if you really want to do this thing, then that's how you have to.
And even the rich white guys are doing it. I mean, they're with Aspen. They're hanging out, they're chilling, they're on Jeff's boat, networking. I mean,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They just sort of do it at a different echelon than the rest of us. I'd love to pivot a little bit and have you tell the audience a bit more about Project Diane. It's one of the projects that actually inspired a research project that we at TAR are currently doing to identify the systemic gaps for women and BIPOC founders, getting funding and sort of how that ecosystem is preventing them from getting the funding. We're working with the University of Denver on that. And I came across it, and it was just a really inspiring project. So I'd love for people to know a little bit about, how you got started on that, and then how it led to what you're doing today. Because I think that the thread here to pull is that you never know what's going to lead to the next thing. And the thing that you're doing today, I would say 8 times out of 10 is not the thing that you're going to be doing in 5 or 10 years, but it can inform what comes next, and having that kind of foresight is a really valuable asset. Yeah. So
life is really crazy. So I'm going to back up a little bit. I started my career as an epidemiologist. How many people here know what an epidemiologist is? Okay. Pre-pandemic, no one knew what it was. Now everyone's like, yes, I love epidemiology. So I started my career as an epidemiologist and fell into blogging because I had a sick parent and I was living abroad and working abroad and had to come back to the States, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I was newly married. I was spending tons and tons of money. I was always the most fabulous person in the lab. Who wears Gucci in like a virology lab? But anyway, that's a whole other thing. And so my husband at the time was like, you spend a lot of money, sister. Like, we're trying to build our life. Like, maybe you should figure out a different avenue. Like, maybe you could do the shopping, but maybe just talk about it. And there's this new thing called a blog, and this was 2002. So I'm going way back in the Stone Ages. And so started the blog. No one read it but my mom and my sister-in-law. Literally, no one read it. And then maybe 6 months into it, the Associated Press contacted me. And why this is important is, in the early part of content online, few content producers, traditional content producers, the newspapers, the TV shows, folks like that, spent any money on content. They actually thought the internet was a fad, and they made no investment in the development of content. Hence how a lot of TikTok, Facebook, these other sort of content sharers, for lack of a better word, came up, was because newspapers didn't make the investment. They thought it was a fad. As a result, they used folks like Associated Press to do all their online content. So they used the wire services because they were not producing original content themselves. So someone from the Associated Press contacted me and was like, hey, we're writing about people who traveled to New York to go to sample cells. I'm like, well, that is me. Let's talk. I was living in Philly at the time. And they did this article and they put a link to the Budget Fashionista, which was the name of my site and later my company. And I don't know if you remember that old IBM commercial where it's like, they get online and then like there's one user and then there's 1,000 users and there's like 10,000. That is what happened to me. And this was before the cloud. So all our servers were crashing. I mean, it was like crazy. It was just crashing. There was no scaling gracefully for those of you who are engineers here. There was none of that back in 2002, web. And so I say this to say that I started off as this sort of entrepreneur. I built this sort of company that started off as a hobby and then it became a thing, and went to enter into a incubator program, one of the early incubator programs in New York City, and was met for the first time in my life with people who did not think I could do it. Not that they had low expectations of me, they had no expectations of me. And I'm an overachiever, and those of you who are overachievers, you know how frustrating it is when people don't think that you can do what you can do. But imagine if people didn't think you could do nothing, right? And it was just so crazy. I was one of 3 women. It was 40 people in it. And I was the only person of color. I joke, I was the only person who even had a tan. And it was just so bananas. They just didn't call on me, people didn't want to work with me. Now, at the same time, I had built a successful company. I was a correspondent on the Today Show every month, right? And they just literally didn't think I could do anything. And I was building a company that was going to be kind of like a glossier for like Black women. That was like what I was building. And so I get up, and I told this story earlier, to pitch my company. It was amazing. I was like, they're gonna so love this, because when it comes to hair care, Black women purchase over 60% of all hair care in the United States. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And at the time, this was 2009, there had been no successful exits. Since then, there's been a number of very successful unicorn exits of companies led by Black founders who were building around hair care. But in 2009, no one saw that. And so it was met with just the craziest sort of questions. It was just so absurd. And so that stuck with me. And so I later sold my company, The Budget Fashionista, and was working for another woman-led startup called Blog Her. And Blog Her was an amazing company, and it was the first sort of group of influencers. They were the first to sort of harness particularly women influencers. And people used to say, oh, those are just mommy bloggers. Women online, they're not good consumers. I mean, it's so stupid now. But seeing them build and seeing the challenges that happened, even for them, and they actually accepted venture. I didn't accept venture for my company. And just seeing that challenge, it just really stuck with me. So when I started Digital Undivided, which is a global organization now that helps Black and Latinx women who are building startups, when I first started, it was really a challenge. People did not see women, let alone women of color, as innovators. Just literally didn't see it. I remember trying to get some initial support. We started off as a for-profit and then changed to a social enterprise. But getting some initial support from Amex and others who came on, but we would talk to the tech companies, and their only interest was whether or not we could help them get employees. They did not see any investment opportunities in women-led startups, particularly women of color-led startups. It was so frustrating. So I was gonna just chuck it all in. I was like, I'm done with this shit. I mean, literally, I said that in my head. I'm done with it. It's just too hard, and I have other things I wanna do. But before I go, I'm gonna blow shit up. Before I go, because what would happen is, I would say, we would talk about how particularly Black women weren't receiving investment. And, tech dudes, colleagues, many of them who become friends, would say, oh, but what about blah, blah, blah? And what we realized is they were saying the same single Black woman over and over and over again. It was a counting bias. So they kept saying her name so much that they thought it was 100, but it was really, they were just saying the same person 100 times. And I was like, okay, I've got to document this. And my husband at the time was like, aren't you an epidemiologist? Didn't you go to school to do research and document? I was like, oh, you're right. It's didn't we just pay off that Yale degree? I'm like, you are so right. Okay, so let me do it. And sometimes as women, I think we look for answers outside of ourselves. And not just women, but other people who are marginalized. We look for the answers in other people instead of you know what? I'm a Yale-educated epidemiologist. I can do this shit. Why do I have to like go ask somebody else? And so that's where Project Diane happened. No one would give us money to do it. The only person, and this is the importance of allies, the only person was one of the founders of BlogHer's partner was at GoDaddy, white male ally. And he said, I think this needs to be done. And I have the ability to write a check for $5,000 and I don't have to ask anybody's permission. And I'm gonna write it to you. And he did it. And I say this to say, particularly for the allies in the room, what may seem small to you could be a catalyst for something massive. And you are often in positions of power that we're not in. And it's okay. You literally can't give back that birthright that you have. You're like Prince Harry, right? He can go wherever he wants. He's still Prince Harry. You're still part of the royal family. And so, but what you can do is use it. You have the power, so use it. And so that's what he did. And it was this little amount of money, and it was myself and like 13, Ukrainian data collectors. And we did the first Project Diane, totally on a shoestring. And I released it because I was done being in the startup space. I'm like, I'm over. I'm gonna go be an epidemiologist or something. And it like took off. And now to see, it's now in this like fifth report. It comes out every 2 years, and to see the impact it has and continues to have on the startup space is just one of the greatest moments of my life. When we first documented, there was only 11 Black women who raised over $1 million. The average raised by Black women at that time was $34,000. The average raised by mostly failed, mostly white, mostly male startups was 1.4 million. So we weren't even raising enough to fail properly, which was like weird, right? And so it just really created this catalyst that I can tell you when I was doing it, it was really like, I'm done, I'm out of this space, peace. I just want to leave something, because I know I'm not crazy. I know there's a problem here, and I just want to document it, and I know how to do that. And so let me do that and then leave, and then I can say that I left the space better than when I came in. And it amazes me how it continues to change things.
If you can't see it, you can't change it, right? So we're doing something similar, it truly astonishes me. There's no research that shows the systemic gaps that founders are falling through the cracks of the funding ecosystem.
Well, it's easy to ignore something if you don't quantify it.
If you don't quantify it,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's where Project Diane was the impetus behind what we're doing. So we're hoping that it'll have a somewhat similar effect. I've got 2 more questions, and then we're gonna open it up to the audience. So talking a little bit more about this vision around diversity in the funding ecosystem, it's a really powerful voice that needs to be amplified, what you're doing at Genius Guild. And I'd like for you to tell everybody here in the audience, how can they bring your message and your work that you're doing at Genius Guild to an even wider audience? What can we do in this room to help continue the work?
Oh my God, thank you. Well, buy the book. That's what my publisher
wants to
know. I think also you building and you talking to others and sharing your successes and failures is another way to help share it. One of the things I think we don't talk enough about is the bad things, right? We're in a very social media marketing sort of space where we talk a lot about what's good, right? Everyone looks amazing. Everyone has great filters. We all look amazing. But no one really talks about the hard part of entrepreneurship. The moments where you're in crisis. We don't talk enough about that. And I think one of the ways to continue the message is to continue to talk about that path, the good and the bad, right? The triumphs and the mountains and the valleys, right? Like talk about both. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we help each other be successful. I have had some real valleys, and I've also had some real mountains. And all of that together helps make who I am and helps make my journey.
Beautiful. Final question. I want to talk a little bit about celebrating, breathing, and reflecting for builders, because I know that everybody in this room is burned out. Everybody in this room has a million things going on. We're all tired. We're all still trying to figure out this very weird post-COVID world. And at the close of the book, you remind us of the following: that one thing builders often forget to do after climbing impossible mountains is take a moment to breathe and reflect. If you are broken, the wheel, which is your business, doesn't spin. And I'm curious first how you, Kathryn Finney, entrepreneur, builder, investor, author, speaker, and all around just like exceptional human being. I'm still so in awe of you, and I'm going to start to cry. How do you pause and reflect and take care of you?
So sometimes I'm really good at it. Sometimes I'm horrible.
And sometimes you get COVID.
Sometimes you get COVID. I think that's a perfect example. Earlier this past week, I got COVID. And I'm someone who's like going. Like after this, I'm on a plane to New York to speak with Melinda Gates. Like I'm going. And last week, my body, the universe, my son's germs said, hey, you're going to stop for a moment. Whether you want to or not, you have to stop. And what I've gotten great at is listening to that. And I think sometimes as an entrepreneur, or even if you're not an entrepreneur, if you're working, you have family, you have people who depend on you, you don't stop, right? You're like, I can't stop. If I stop, then the world stops. And what I've learned is that it's important to listen to the body, listen to people around you who love you. And so I had to stop for 3 of the most boring days of my entire life. I was so bored to tears. But my body was like, you need to slow down. And I listened. And so one of the things I would say is to make sure that you stop. Not only when you're sick, but also when things are good. And just taking like one moment to have gratitude. I journal. If you don't, and I'm an Oprah fan, Oprah has the most amazing journal of gratitude that I have sent to everyone I know. And I say, get it, whether you're male, female, regardless of your race, your class, whatever. It is so helpful in like taking a moment of gratitude, because when things are going good, you should also appreciate that too and say thank you. Thank you to people around you. Thank you to your staff and team. I have a wonderful team. I would not be able to do what I do if it hadn't been for them. I have a wonderful family that helps me to do the things that I need to do. And so having these moments of gratitude is another way that I celebrate. I also am very, very much into giving to myself. I have no problem spending money on myself. Now, let me tell you, that took a while. That took a lot, both being Minnesotan, being a mom, all the tech. I didn't want to spend money on myself. Now I do it like I love it. I love it. And I dare anybody to say anything about it, because my family's good and everyone's good, and I deserve it. I deserve to spend money on myself and time on myself. And I would say to those of you out there that feel a little guilt when you buy yourself that special treat, don't. Don't. You worked for it. It is your money. You can't take it with you. So moments that bring joy to you, invest in that. It's okay to spend money on yourself. It is. And it took me a long time to get that, but I will celebrate myself whenever I can. And sometimes it's not even money. Sometimes it's, we had a particularly hard week with one of our portfolio companies that we helped get to the next level, but it was really, really tough. And I was like, you know what? I am taking the afternoon off and I'm going to see the Barbie movie, because I just spent literally 2 solid weeks, almost 24 hours a day, working with this company to get them to the next step. I'm going to the Barbie movie. That's my little treat to myself. And so, but you give yourself permission to celebrate you and to do those things, and it's okay to do that. And don't allow anyone to tell you that it's not, especially when you're the one building and investing and doing things within your company.
And with that, I want everybody in the room to remember this moment and to write down right now what you can do to treat yourself. Whether it's within the next day, next week, next month, I'm going to Salida this weekend by myself.
Yes.
And I go, early
Love doing
leaf
things by
peeping.
myself.
Absolutely. So I want everybody to just take that moment because you all deserve it. We're going to open up for questions. We got about 10 minutes. So do we have another microphone? Yep.
The
One
best
right
meme,
over here.
While we're waiting for the question, the
blue?
best meme I just saw, and it's my favorite meme, and it's related to Colorado, and it was before the Colorado-Nebraska game, and it's these two guys holding up poster boards, and one of the poster boards says, CSU is Barbie, and Nebraska is Ken. And I just thought, what a time we live in, where Barbie is considered the flex when it comes to football, right? Being a Barbie in football is cool. I love that.
That's a beautiful thing. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
So many founders get into their businesses because they have a passion for the operation or the thing that they're building. And when it comes time to fundraise, or whether that's like applying for grants or going to pitch, the job transitions from being an operator, somebody who's like really invested in the doing and the making, to somebody who's really invested in talking about the doing and the making. How would you recommend founders think about this transition and their responsibility? Or what do you think, as a second question, what do you think a founder's primary job is?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it's always a challenge when you go from founder to CEO, right? Because those are two different things. A founder, you're just trying to get it started. You're trying to get something built. You're just trying to get something out there. A CEO is now you have to manage what's out there. You have to manage the people. You have to manage the finances. You have to manage a lot of different things, and that can be a real challenge for a founder. The best advice I have is really, one, get a mentor tomorrow if you don't have one, particularly a mentor of someone who's gone through that transition of founder to CEO who can help you work through it. Because it is a very different mindset, and it's very, very hard. So there's that. Two, being in communities like this, I cannot tell you how important it is to be in community with each other. That is where you're going to learn the most, and that's where you're going to get the most help. So staying in community, making the connections, going to events, and things like that. If you're not a great public speaker, and a lot of people aren't, because it's hard public speaking, it's not exactly easy, definitely join things like Toastmasters. I know that's kind of old school, but it is really good in helping you structure how to speak. You can also come to events like this and look at other speakers, watch YouTube videos of people that you admire who are great speakers as well. That's a great way to get you ready. And then also with most investors now, there's been the ability to perform your company, which is what I call pitching, has been de-emphasized quite a bit. So it's not the way it was like 5 or 10 years ago, where if you couldn't get up and pitch and razzle-dazzle them, then you were just not going to get any money. It's not that way anymore. So you do have some opportunities, particularly if what you're doing is very deep tech. There's no way to make, certain things razzle-dazzle. You can't make it that, excitingly sexy. So many investors are kind of not paying attention to that as much now. But those are the three things I would say to do. Yeah.
Great question. Okay, go ahead.
Hi. I'm wondering if you have any advice. It sounds like you have an incredibly supportive partner, so congratulations.
Not anymore. I am divorced.
Okay, well,
Well, let me talk about that. I would say I'm very fortunate because my ex-husband actually is very supportive of me. And I always say to people, choose your partners wisely. Partner with someone who's useful. And I will say, even though we're no longer married, he was very supportive of me in my career. Very much so. And even to this day, is still very supportive. And so be very careful about who you partner with. I cannot stress that enough. Be very careful. And make sure that even if things don't work out, this is someone who can be a support for you and not a hindrance. And I'm fortunate that even though we're not married, he's still a support for me.
so my question was, how can you train your partner to be supportive for you? I'm definitely, but here's the thing, my partner is supportive, but he's lost.
He doesn't know
right?
how.
So what can you do as a founder to position yourself so that you can ask for what you need?
Yeah. No, I love that, because it's even bigger than partner. Let's expand it out even to family and friends. How can you train your family and friends to support you when they don't know what it is that you do? No one in my family is a venture capitalist. Nobody knows what the hell that is. And so one of the things I think we often do as people, sometimes we make assumptions about other people in terms of what they can do for us, and particularly our families, right? And for the most part, our families, and those of us who created our families, who are maybe not biological, but just the people around us that we consider families, they want us to win. And one of the things to do is invite them in. Give them a way to help. And so I was telling earlier about how I was starting Digital Divided. I was in Atlanta, and I could not find good daycare for my son. I told the story about he would go to this daycare, and it was this kid with a snotty nose, and he was like there when we arrived, and he was there when we left, and the kid would look at me and like, please take me with you. I felt so bad for the kid, but and I was just at my wit's end. I could not find good care for my child, and it was impacting my business because my child comes first. And so I called my mother, who was living a fabulous life as a retiree, and I said, I need your help. And she came, and she stayed for like 4 years. Which was amazing, amazing. And so that wasn't money, though. In the startup world, in the founder sort of startup ecosystem, it's like your family writes you a $50,000 check, and that's their value to you. My mother came and took care of my child. I don't even know how much money I could put to that. That gave me the peace of mind to be able to build my company. And there's other ways that family members can get involved. And I think for us, it's always like this money. It doesn't have to be money. So invite him or her in to what you're doing. When you are going to an event like this, say, hey, I'm going to this startup event. I really would love for you to come with me. Or if you're even doing a pitch or a speech, I would love for you to come and see what I'm doing and learn more. You would be shocked at how your family loves it. Another story, in Digital Divided, there was 2 companies that we had invested in. One company, the founder's parents, her father was a bus driver, her mother was a nurse, knew absolutely nothing about tech or startups. And so we had a pitch day, and afterwards, another investor came to me and was like, I just met Farrah's parents, and they were so amazing. Like, does her father have a background in startup? I'm like, no, he's a bus driver. But what her father did was, as soon as she entered into the startup community, he bought a subscription to Inc., to Fast Company, started reading TechCrunch, all these different things because he wanted to be supportive, and she let him in. Another one of our founders is Latina, lived in New Jersey. Her parents were immigrants. Her father owned a landscaping company. Her mother owned a housekeeping company. They had no idea what she was doing. And she often tells, her mom said to her, well, the white people said what you're doing is good. That's what you worked for. But what her parents would do, every time she had to travel, her house was clean. She had food in the refrigerator. Every time she came back, everything was clean, food was in the refrigerator. And she let them in, and that was the way in which they could contribute. So your family doesn't have to know anything about startups or venture or cap tables or any of this other stuff. They want you to win, and so give them ways in which to help you that may not be money, but are definitely incredibly valuable.
I'm so sorry. We just got the stop sign. I know we could sit here all day. Can we do one more? Do we have time? Thumbs up?
I'm sorry. I'm from Minnesota. I talk. It's what I do.
One more, right here.
Hi, my name is Michelle Jackson. I run Square State, Colorado. So welcome to Colorado. There are Black people here. You understand? A lot of us are creating digital businesses. And one of the things that I've noticed with digital businesses in particular is you might get revenue coming in and it shoots up, but you don't necessarily have cash flow. And so I would love for you to talk about how you would encourage businesses to think about building cash flow into these digital properties so that they can sustain the type of work that they're doing and grow during those like difficult times?
That's the key question, managing cash flow, right? The advice I would give is two things. One, when times are high, that is the time that you want to seek out loans and things. You want to get loans and investment when you don't actually quite need it yet, because it's very hard to get it when you really do need it. So that would be the first thing. So if you are, say, a seasonal business, right? Maybe landscaping might be an example of that, going back to that. And you know that the months of, and I don't know the seasons here in Denver, but let's say April to October are your like months where you're gonna make 80% of your revenue for the year. That is the time that you wanna start to seek out loans, grants, and things like that before you actually need it. The other thing is you wanna make sure that you're creating savings accounts. And I know this is like kind of an old school sort of thing, but when times are good, don't spend it all. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs do that. Like, you know, times are really, really good and they'll spend all the money. And like, no, take a percentage of it and sock it away. It could be a money market. It could be whatever is available to you. Just put it to the side because you know the lull is coming. And that's going to help you manage cash flow in really negative times. It used to be the advice would be to get a line of credit from your bank to help manage those like low times. But again, banks are not lending like they used to, which is really actually horrible. Because that's where you usually manage cash flow is through this line of credit. So when cash gets back up, you're able to pay the line of credit back down. So those would be some of the things that I would suggest. I think too, there's other types of funding available like revenue-based financing, which is a relatively new way of thinking of financing. It's basically getting, and I'm gonna be really basic here, but it's basically getting investment based upon your revenue in which you pay it back at some sort of multiple, usually 3 times. And they might take a little bit of very small equity at the end of that, but it allows you to like use your revenue in order to get financing, which is a great option if you have a company that has revenue, but you yourself maybe don't have great credit or it doesn't have a lot of revenue for you to be able to get a traditional loan. But those are the ways that you can manage cash. I would implore you all when times are good to sock the money away, like, and not spend it all. I know there's a tendency to want to reinvest in the business, but you need to have a certain like rainy day fund for your business, particularly when you're a small business. You need to have a rainy day fund for your business that you keep to the side.
I always love ending on a money conversation. Thank you for that. Kathryn, thank you so much. Yes. She will be signing books outside for a little bit. We'll be hanging around here for a little bit longer. Thank you again to Denver Startup Week, to our partners, Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce, and to all of you for building the damn thing. So have a great Denver Startup Week.